Hi everyone, hope you're having a really beautiful Friday. That noise is just awoken my cat who is peacefully sleeping on the bed, so she's probably going to try and join in the video again today. So hopefully that's not going to be too disturbing. So just before we start, I would like, here we go. Here she is. This is Karma, by the way, for anybody who hasn't met her. She's an absolutely beautiful cat. She's peach in colour. She's not actually ginger, she's peach. It's very rare, and she has these beautiful pale green eyes. And actually, if I was to rename her, I like the name Karma, but if I was to rename her, I had the opportunity to rename her, I would name her Venus. So before we start, I want to draw your attention again to this beautiful pendant. I was wearing it in my last video as well, and this is a dragon's vein agate. It was made by a very talented local lady, and her business is called Designs by Ethna, and she makes lots of amazing, beautiful, this is becoming a recurring thing, beautiful crystal jewellery. I'm going to just hold my candle for now. So yes, I will put the link in the comments below, and if you're interested in checking out more of Ethna's jewellery, you can do that. So actually, to be completely honest, at the moment I'm feeling a little bit exhausted, and I kind of know why it is. The sun's actually transiting through my 12th house at the moment, and during that time we can tend to feel just like our batteries are running a little bit low, and it's a good time to take a rest. So for the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm just going to take things a little bit easy. I don't have an awful lot on my schedule, and I'm going to leave it like that until September, which is just great. I'm also going to start tearing into my house and my work environment and give it a good clean out, because with this Mercury moving into Virgo energy, and we'll have more Virgo energy coming at the end of August, it's going to give us assistance with those sort of organisational activities. So I'm dying to get a good clear out of my whole space, wardrobe, paperwork, big deep clean. I'm actually getting quite excited about it. So right, today I want to talk about a subject that I think will resonate with a lot of people, especially the type of people who would be interested in my work and in the type of subjects I discuss on my channel. I'll pop my candle back again because the cat is at a safe distance. I would really love to get some interaction on this video, so feel free to share your experiences, your thoughts, your ideas. I want to thank Karen because last week at our moon circle, our new moon circle, she brought this subject up and we had a great discussion about it, and it reminded me that I wanted to make a video about this. I have a list as long as my arm on subjects for videos, and God knows how I'm going to catch up with getting it all done. But here we are. So we had this chat, and this is a subject that I have been interested in, very close to my heart. I've been interested in this subject for quite a few years now. It's been something that I've been reading up on, really reflecting on. I really resonate with these subjects and these ideas. And the subject is the fact that many people who have a diagnosis of ADHD or autism or any other sort of neurodivergent, that's the new sort of trendy term, I think, neurodivergent condition, also resonate very much with the idea of being either an indigo soul or a crystal soul or a starseed. So can you just let me know if these terms are labels that you're familiar with, that you maybe identify with yourself, or that you have any experience with? Maybe you're thinking about yourself, or maybe it's your child, but an awful lot of people in the spiritual community that I've noticed either feel themselves, a lot of adults feel that they're undiagnosed ADHD or autism, I suppose sufferers, some people would say. And an awful lot of these people also have children who maybe have a diagnosis or are going through a diagnostic process for some of these conditions. And there very much seems to be an overlap between the spiritual community and these types of, and I'm going to put it in inverted commas, conditions. And there's quite a lot that I want to just tease out. This is not me claiming to be an expert at all. I do have a lot of experience in relation to all of these ideas, and I do very much have my own beliefs and understanding of all of this. But I'm not claiming to be an expert, so I would really love to start a discussion and hear your thoughts on it. So yes, there seems to be this overlap between diagnoses of autism, ADHD, and the idea of being an indigo, crystal, or starseed soul. So I know quite a few people, even in my friend sphere or maybe clients, who have either had diagnoses as an adult of some form of ASD or ADHD, or they feel that they have these conditions because they've been reading up the material online about how these conditions present, and they very much identify with it. I also know many people in my sphere who are interested in spiritual subjects who have children with these labels of these conditions also, or they suspect that they may have these conditions. So I actually used to work in the health service. I used to work as a speech and language therapist, and as part of my job, I was actually involved in the diagnostic process for children with autism. And I worked a lot with children with ADHD and autism, and a wide range of different childhood conditions, pediatric conditions. And I remember that it was really interesting. There was this one particular profile. It was a pragmatics profile, and the pragmatic profile was looking all about the child's social use of a language. And there was a really long list of questions that was part of this profile that we would go through with parents to try and gather as much information about their children as part of this diagnostic process. And this particular profile was called the Jewett and Summers Pragmatics Profile. And I remember being quite fascinated. This was back even before I had my own spiritual awakening. I had a big break from work for about 18 months during that time, and then I went back on a part-time basis for about a year, and I went back in with my eyes completely open and with a whole different perspective on things. But one of the questions on this pragmatics profile was, does your child have an unusual interest in subjects such as God or the afterlife or these sort of esoteric subjects? And I remember thinking, well, this is really strange that this is part of a medical diagnosis. What has this got to do with a medical condition? Surely if a child has an interest in spirituality and has the ability to think at this high level and ask questions about the meaning of life, that was another thing. Do they have a preoccupation with the meaning of life? That this was being portrayed as some sort of a disordered condition. And this just didn't really sit well with me at all. Because of course it would suggest that the child is probably highly evolved or spiritually gifted in some way, that they're showing an interest in these subjects. And really that's what the whole idea of an indigo or crystal or a starseed soul is. They're children who are born onto the planet with a high level of spiritual awareness, or they're born spiritually awake. Or they're highly evolved souls who have come from higher dimensions onto the earth, but they have a high level of soul evolution because they're old souls. So they're carrying this wisdom, this knowledge, this inner knowing, this curiosity about the spiritual dimensions of life. So this surely has there's nothing disordered about this, but in society and in this overly scientific, overly medical run world that we live in, the whole idea of spirituality is seen as something disordered or unusual, or something that needs to be labelled as a condition. And I often wonder, is this a deliberate thing, Or is this simply society's way of trying to understand why some people don't fit in with the societal systems that are set up? Part of me feels, you know, from a conspiratorial point of view, that in order to suppress the gifts and the impact of these highly evolved souls that they could have on the people around them, it's important for those people to be labelled as disordered in some way so that they can be medicated and suppressed and maybe dismissed or even pitied, or, you know, some way of sort of discounting their difference and what that difference might mean for the 3D system. Or is it simply the fact that, you know, within the 3D way of thinking and the 3D level of consciousness, there's just no awareness of this other spiritual, these other higher levels of consciousness. And so they assume that because these people are different, that there must be something wrong with them. And then they go about creating all of these labels to just sort of help to sort people out into these boxes, because of course these people don't fit into a box, but because of that they want to create their own little box for these people to fit into, so that, you know, it just brings some sort of order to society, and, you know, how we can account for the fact that there are these people who are highly creative, highly intelligent, really sometimes at genius level, that it's because they're disordered. You know, it couldn't be that perhaps humanity has the potential to evolve to higher levels, or perhaps these people have something to teach. So let's just go through a little bit more about indigos, crystals. There's also rainbow children. I don't really claim to know an awful lot about the rainbow children, and starseeds. So indigos are said to have been born really from the 1970s on. And these souls, I identified a long time ago as an indigo soul, and this was sort of confirmed to me by various healers and that as well. But I also felt that after my spiritual awakening that I started to go through this indigo to crystal transition, and you can read up about that. There's plenty of information about that online, where that's really a whole sort of repatterning of your energetic field and your energy field, so that you're sort of, I think, really mellowing a little bit, but it's a step up from being the indigo soul. The indigo soul is like a warrior soul. They're old souls, they're very wise, they're very intuitive and caring, very curious, out of the box, right brain thinkers. They can seem to be immature, but in fact they're actually very, very wise, and they feel like they're born with a real sense of purpose, and they're very much about rebelling against the systems, tearing down the systems, seeing the injustice in the world and wanting to fight against it and do something about it and, you know, tear it all apart. So that's the indigo type of energy. The crystal energy, if you think about, one generation is always, or usually, like an upgrade of the generation before. And crystal energy is like an upgrade or the next level of the indigo energy. And the crystal children have a lot of these same qualities as indigos, but they're less rebellious. They're more peaceful. They're more empathic and sensitive and psychically sensitive. So the indigo souls are more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD, whereas the crystal children are more likely to be diagnosed with some form of autism. And the crystal children often have a really hard time fitting in with their peers or forming friendships and that. An analogy came to me earlier. I was thinking about, say for example, and this is a very crude analogy, and I don't mean to be in any way, this is not meant to be insulting or rude in any way. It's just a really exaggerated way of looking at it. Say for example, you had a nursery school, and in that nursery school, or maybe it's very early stages of school, you're learning the very basics, like how to put one brick on top of another, or how to tie your shoelaces, or just these really basic concepts. And into that environment, you introduce a child or even an adult who's actually an astrophysicist. How well do you think the astrophysicist is going to fit into this learning environment? Are they going to be engaged in learning how to build towers of bricks when their minds are so advanced that they're dealing with these really complex concepts? Are they going to fit in with these other children who are at a very basic level of understanding? Are they going to be able to form relationships with people who don't have the same level of understanding of life or the same interests as them? And are they going to get very bored and very distracted and very agitated? You can imagine that they would, because this learning environment is not suitable for them, and their brains are not wired in the same way. Their brains are wired in a completely different way. And that brings me on to the idea of star seeds. So my understanding of star seeds is that these are souls who have come from higher dimensions, other planets, higher, where there are higher levels of consciousness, other star systems, which are more highly evolved, because there are other star systems out there that are more highly evolved than where we are here, and there are other suns that are more evolved and more high frequency than our sun. So this would include star systems like the Pleiades, or Sirius, or the Arcturians, or the Andromedans. I don't know an awful lot about all of these personally myself. I feel very closely connected with the Pleiades and also with the planet Venus. So what did I want to say about this? The star seeds. If you imagine your soul has incarnated onto a different planet with different conditions, or in a different star system where even the sun has different qualities to the sun here, and the soul has developed in response to its environment there. And then the idea with star seeds is that they have come into this dimension, into this 3D planet, to help with the evolution of human consciousness, especially at this time from 3D to 5D, but they've been coming here for millions of years to help with the evolution on the planet and to help the planet evolve to a higher dimension. But if these souls originated in a completely different environment, you can imagine that their whole energy system is very different to an energy system that has originated on planet Earth and evolved on planet Earth. So really it's our souls and our energy body that create our physical body, our brain, our neural pathways, all of this. So effectively these souls are just wired completely differently from Earth souls that originated on Earth. So these people, again, they respond very differently to the environment. This is why I feel that a lot of these people are very sensitive to things in the environment. They might be very sensitive to light and sound and chemicals and all of these things, because their systems are designed to be more sensitive, but because they're coming from a higher realm of consciousness, where that sensitivity would actually be a gift instead of it seeming sometimes like a bit of a curse here. So is this resonating with you? I would really be interested to hear your thoughts on this. As I said, I don't claim to have all the answers. This is me just teasing out my own ideas about it. As I said, this is a subject that I've been aware of for many years. I've dipped in and out of kind of studying it for many years. I have my own experience with it. I certainly grew up. I definitely didn't feel like I fitted in from adolescence and into adulthood. Then I went through a massive spiritual awakening around age 30, and my whole sort of sensitivities became even more pronounced, and I had to change my whole lifestyle and my whole approach to life. And that was around the time that my daughter was born, and my daughter, who's now 14, she's been identified by various healers as being a crystal child, and she's also going through the diagnostic process for autism, and I'll explain a little bit about that. When she was younger, when she was only a baby and a toddler, I wasn't really very spiritually awake at that time. My mind was very much still within this medical model, scientific model of development and my understanding of the world. And as I said, I actually worked for the health service, and I was involved in the diagnosis of autism, and I was looking at her developing as a baby and a toddler and a young child, and she was presenting with a lot of these traits or symptoms, and but it was really not, I suppose, pronounced enough that it was picked up by teachers of that, because it's very difficult to pick up on these difficulties or traits in girls because they're very good at masking things. So I felt really from she was about 18 months old that she did in fact have autism, and she did go through various different appointments, and that with paediatricians, where, you know, they said yes, she did have certain traits, but it wasn't really severe enough for them to consider putting her forward for a diagnosis. But as time has gone on, it has become probably even more pronounced, the difficulties that she has in mixing with her peers or in getting on with sort of schoolwork. She's extremely creative and artistic and sensitive and really, really wise, and very intuitive, and she has all of these amazing gifts, and she really, really hates school, and she really hates this whole sort of linear way that things have to happen, and all of these things that you have to do that you don't want to do, which is all perfectly reasonable in my eyes, that she would feel like this, but this is the way that the system is set up. And because these I suppose you could call them difficulties, but they're just experiences, have continued right into her adolescence now, they are actually going ahead with a formal diagnostic process and assessment. So I feel very closely connected with this whole subject, and I'm very interested in it. She also has very strong signs in her natal chart of being an energy healer. She's a stellium of planets in the 6th house. And yeah, also this very, very creative, artistic, same as my older daughter. So she has this very artistic, creative streak. So if you think about the school system, it's really not set up very well to support creativity and self-expression. And if you have souls that are extremely creative, because what goes along with a high level of consciousness is a high level of creativity, and they're trying to force them into this sort of system of learning all of these sort of very just sort of restrictive ideas and subjects, it's very hard for a person and a soul like that to fit into that situation. And it's funny even to see, she's just going into 4th year here in the UK school system, and of course she has chosen to do art as one of her GCSE subjects, and she was sent home with this huge project to do over the summer. And the project, they were given this book, and they were given this massive list of creative projects that they had to do. And to be honest, even as an adult looking at it, it was so overwhelming, and I thought, this is crazy. Like, none of the other subjects have any other homework to do over the summer holidays, but yet these children who are naturally creative and artistic, all of this load is being put on top of them. It's being made into this massive chore for them. And that starts me asking all sorts of questions about, why that is. Because, had she been left to her own devices, she would have got on with all of her own creativity over the summer, and she would have been so enthusiastic about it. But because it has been put onto her as something that she has to do, and it has to be done in a specific way, it's really zapping her passion for it, which is so disappointing. And I know other people who have had their children study art in school, it's been the same way. So even within the creative subjects, they're taught in such a way that is so restrictive also, rather than letting people's imaginations flow freely. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about and bring up in relation to this is different bloodlines, and the whole issue of the rhesus factor. So the rhesus factor is really interesting to look at, because it suggests that There are bloodlines that originated on planet Earth because this rhesus factor is present also in apes. And if you believe in the theory of evolution, that humanity did evolve from a very primitive stage of being apes, that this rhesus factor is present both in apes and in human beings. But some people don't have the rhesus factor in their blood, they're rhesus negative. And it has been put forward as a hypothesis or an idea or suggestion that these bloodlines didn't actually originate on planet Earth because they don't have this rhesus factor, and that would seem to tie in with the idea of starseeds coming from these other planets and these other star systems and incarnating onto the Earth with their own bloodlines, and those bloodlines being passed on from generation to generation. And particularly interesting is the O negative blood type, which is the most rare of all. It's also called sometimes blue blood or royal blood. And I've been listening to some information recently about Venusian starseeds and Palladian starseeds, that they had this blue blood. And often, if you go way, way back in mythology and the Vedic texts and all of these ancient scriptures, often the gods were portrayed as having this blue skin. So this colour blue is very much associated with this otherworldly presence on Earth. And as I said, this sort of blue blood, royal blood. I suppose the reason why the O negative blood is so interesting is that it is the universal donor. And that means that O negative blood can be given to anybody in a blood transfusion, but people with O negative blood cannot receive anything other than O negative blood. And there are a whole list of traits that are recorded that people with O negative blood tend to have. So that's very interesting. If you have O negative blood, you might want to look that up. I found out myself that I had O negative blood when I was pregnant, and obviously there's tests that need to be done around that time because of that. So that's really interesting. Let me know if you've had any of these experiences or what your ideas are about this subject. I think that's really all I wanted to say about it for now. I may make other videos about it. I may continue this discussion even as my own understanding evolves. But again, I want to thank Karen. Karen comes along to my moon circles, and she's very much interested in all of these ideas, and it's really great when we have our gatherings because we sit outside around the fire after we've done all our activities and our drumming, and the conversation usually turns to all of these really interesting subjects, and nobody ever wants to go home. We could stay out all night talking about it, and of course those are the kind of conversations that I absolutely love having, and they really light me up because they're so inspiring and interesting, and the complete opposite to all of the mundane things that we often find people talking about in the 3D world, through the media. All of this, the types of conversations that I like having are of a more esoteric nature, about the mysteries of life and spiritual concepts. And I know we have to deal with the physical and mundane aspects of life also. And I feel that the star seeds and the indigos and the crystals, when they come in, they have to really learn to master the sort of physical aspects of life, the lower three chakras and the material realm, that they're weaker in those areas, but they're much more advanced when it comes to the higher chakras and the more spiritual aspects of life, whereas people who are maybe souls that have originated on planet Earth and have not maybe gone through a spiritual awakening, have much more mastery over the 3D aspects of life, the material realm, and those lower three chakra lessons. And the star seeds are here to help them to master the lessons of the higher chakras. So those are my thoughts and ideas. Hope you found this interesting. Let me know in the comments. I mentioned at the start about how I was feeling tired this month, and it was because the sun was transiting through my 12th house If you're interested in having an astrology reading that will pinpoint for you 3 high points of your year and 3 low points of your year based on the transits, it can be very, very useful because it can help you to plan when you're going to need downtime or when it might be a good time to take on new projects and start new things. Feel free to get in touch and I can do that for you. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Friday and the rest of your weekend. The weather looks absolutely beautiful. I'm going to enjoy this weekend. I'm going to relax and I'm going to soak up the sun, especially with these beautiful energies flowing in through the Lionsgate portal that we are currently in and which will peak on Monday the 8th. So I'm going to make the most of that and I'm just going to relax and let it wash over me and absorb it and process it, and hopefully it will help me evolve to an even higher level. So thanks for listening and I'll be with you again soon.